Choice, Confucius also talks about the root notion of responsibility. The root of responsibility is the word respond. So how does a person respond to the way things go? What should he do when someone has committed a crime? How does he handle them? The issue is presented flatly. Either one can govern by li, or one can't. If one can't, then there is no use deceiving ourselves, and we might as well turn to punishment, to sanctions and rewards. For these can influence people in a coercive way, or by payment, but they are not truly human ways. At this moment, we can see how Confucius's thoughts still have a significant part in our own modern correctional system today. For example, today nearly every single prison across the nation is overcrowded because the system is founded on a punitive model. The law seeks punishment to get criminals off the streets, put them behind bars, and throw away the key. However, what happens when the prisoners are reinstated into society? Nearly all of them reoffend. This is because they have not learned morality or responsibility by just being punished. Confucius says, if you govern the people by laws and keep them in order by penalties, they will avoid these penalties, yet lose their sense of shame. But if you govern them by your moral excellence and keep them in order by your dutiful conduct, they will retain their sense of shame and also live up to this standard. Confucius tells us that if we govern morally, we can keep order. Offenders will feel shame for their actions and will take responsibility for themselves, making them less likely to reoffend. Lacking any concept of moral guilt or moral responsibility as the ground for guilt and hence punishment as moral retribution, Confucius could see no human potential in the use of sanctions, furthermore stressing punishment by moral education over punishment by order. At this point, we have covered the li and how the li fits into the greater aspect of society. Also, we have covered the teo, the path on which an individual can reach his or her specific condition. We said before that the li is the roadmap of the path of teo, the path that does not come easy and requires a lot of responsibility along the way. However, Confucius does not stop there. One of his last major notions, and also arguably his most important, is the notion of gen. Unlike li, where we saw that people had roles and orders they needed to follow to have a harmonious society, gen focuses more on the individual, the feelings, the character, and the attitudes of oneself. Gen has been translated variously as good, humanity, love, benevolence, virtue, manhood, manhood at its best, and so on. Gen is linked at the best to the relationship between men and men, and it is said that one man cannot become gen unless they have first become li, meaning one who has become li is actually one who has become gen as well. People who are gen are courteous, diligent, loyal, brave, broad, and kind. Confucius would say that all these characteristics are major aspects of becoming li. Li is actually the reciprocal of gen. They are two aspects of the same thing, pointing out man and his human role. Li directs our attention to the traditional social pattern of conduct and relationships. Gen directs our attention to the person as one who pursues that pattern of conduct and thus maintains those relationships. This itself, like teo, is not that hard of a concept, because a person either had it or they do not. Men can take his desire and follow the path of teo, finding li, thus being gen, or they fail. It takes a lot of desire to tackle the path and find li, a reason why so many do not take the risk. It is much easier to rely on physical coercion in society, opposed to striving for social harmony. Confucius says, when you see a man of worth, think how to rise to his level. When you see an unworthy man, then look within and examine yourself. Confucius would say that people of worth are role models who have dedicated themselves to gen and social harmony. People who have not dedicated themselves are unworthy to be role models. Lastly, we need to compare the 20th century with Confucius. Does this tell us that Confucius was more of a traditionalist or a visionary? It is hard to say because in truth, it is a little of each. A person could say Confucius was a traditionalist because today, and then, we did not see his ideas as in a religion. We in fact see Confucianism as a Chinese historical tradition. It was traditional for Confucius to assume that if everyone obtained li, that the society would function in social harmony, ending all human misery. On the other hand, we can see that Confucius and his idea of Li as visionary, because the idea of Li would not have a great gravity in our 20th century society. It is far more likely that everyone converting to Li would change a very small town in Lu in 551 BC than converting our industrialized nations with millions of people. Looking at Confucius from a larger realm makes his universal teachings of the past seem much smaller, even historical. Looking back, we must see Confucius as a great cultural innovator. Just as we have noted everywhere else, he has transformed the concept of Li. So now we must take note that in doing so he transformed the whole concept of human society. He was a creator of a new idea, not an apologist for an old one.